Robbie Samuels, oh my gosh, welcome to Curveball and welcome everyone in the world who's listening to this. I'm so happy you're here. Look, Robbie has an amazing story because he had it all lined up. 10 years building a name as like the absolute networking expert. He had a TEDx talk dropped, big breakout, literally on the verge because you had like a really crazy successful YouTube video. Then, like, literally, except that was like right in March of 2020. If you remember, we had that little global pandemic. And no one needed in person networking tips when we were all in sweatpants on Zoom. Some people not even in sweatpants. I don't know anything going on down there. Most people would have panicked, but Robbie pivoted fast. He built a six-figure business teaching virtual event design, which I loved, and then reinvented again. Now he's a top book launch strategist, helping entrepreneurs turn tiny lists into big results by writing a signature book. Oh, and also, fun fact, he's an openly trans founder of a certified LGBT business enterprise. That sounds totally a fish. Basically, resilience, reinvention, and resourcefulness in one amazing human package. Robbie, welcome to Curveball. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for that intro. I'm happy to be here.
You're so welcome. So, you said that you were working 10 years towards a very specific version of your success. And then, boom, like the pandemic, it evaporated almost overnight. And I have quite a few professional speaking clients. And I just remember them being like, oh, like, what do I even do? What was it like to sit with like that kind of loss so early on in the pandemic? I know you're married with a family, but like we're still alone too and trying to figure it out. How did that feel? Like, it's just like, you're just like, life.
Well, so it was about 11, 10, 11 years that I was speaking, and half that time I was still employed. And then I left my day job at the end of 2014 to go full time
Mm,
into entrepreneurship. And I
amazing.
subsequently launched a podcast about leadership and networking. And my first book came out, and I created my first group coaching program, and messy
Right.
step by step figuring that out.
Yes.
Then I didn't know what else to do, so I hired my mentor, almost against her will, to be my paid coach. She was like,
How
"Fine."
do you do that?
She's really expensive, and she basically got me a $10,000 speaking gig that she didn't
So
want,
just to
and I was like, "So now I can afford you."
oh my God, that is so
I
funny.
was making like $12 to $15,000 a year. I was also the primary caregiver to 2 kids under the age of 3.
Oh
And
my
so the
gosh.
business was like being built on the side, right? So she and I worked together in 2019, and she says, "You have to write a article for Harvard Business Review, and you have to do a TEDx talk." And I was like, "Why did I ask
Me?
to work with you?"
Yes, right.
So I worked really hard
Harvard
that year
Business
on the HR
Review, like
article.
that's
I made connections through her. I got the TEDx opportunity, now TEDx Boston, then TEDx Beacon Street. And
amazing.
my video of my TEDx came out in January of 2020, and I was poised to be an overnight success 10 years in the making. And one of the things I did when it got released in mid-January was I focused on getting, in that month, 1,000 views and 100 comments on the YouTube, because I just wanted to have a launch for it. I wanted to come out and be strong.
Right.
And I'm really glad I did that, because 2 months later, as you mentioned, it was March 2020, and suddenly no one needed to know how to network at events because we were all at home. And I had to find a
Right.
new way to show up and offer value. So you asked me, how did I respond to that? Well, I
Right.
remember the Monday of that week. So the 13th was on Friday. The Monday of that week is when I actually started to accept that this was happening. I had been
Right.
watching Rachel Maddow for weeks and months and
Yes.
seeing this like virus coming closer and closer to my backyard. So I think I moved to acceptance really quickly, and
Mm.
on Wednesday, I had a meeting with my peer mastermind, and I was complaining about like, "Oh, what do I do? Like, I don't know how to respond." And one of them just looked at me on Zoom, right? And she was like, "Robbie, networking isn't something you only do at events. You know that."
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
"Right. Okay. All right. All right." She's like, "Go help people." So the day after the 12th, I wrote 9 ways to network in a pandemic as a blog post, and I published
Amazing.
it, and it was very timely. So it got pretty well received. And that night, 8 o'clock Eastern, on a Thursday. I'm reviewing the list, and number 3 says host a virtual happy hour. I had never done that. I had organized one-on-one interviews on Zoom. I had done some small groups on Zoom. I had never checked out the settings. I didn't know I had already had access to breakout rooms. But I'm
Right.
like, well, let's just do this. I had been trained to
Yeah.
do virtual masterminds. So I actually had a little more training than most.
Right.
And because it was Thursday at 8 o'clock, I declared that it would be Friday at 5 Eastern because it was the next logical time in my mind to host something called a happy hour, right?
Right. Yeah. Yes.
And I got a couple people say yes that night. And then I spent 3 hours on Friday individually messaging up until 8 minutes before. I have a friend who showed up. She's like, I got your message 8 minutes before. She's like, I found the email you sent me. And
Amazing.
about 25 people came. And I had some skills that I didn't know I had around facilitation. So it was very clear
Right.
who was about to speak. We all went around and I got up to the end of the call and I said, that was nice, but I can't be on another call where we just go around the room for 3 minutes each. Like, that's not enough.
Right.
And that
Yes.
set me on the path of, well, how do we use this new platform? Not new, but like, how do we use this
Right.
mode
Well, like,
to
remember
engage?
when people would be on Zoom videos and no one would ever be on video?
Yeah.
One of the things about the pandemic is I was like, oh no, now I have to do my hair and makeup
All right.
because I have to be. Sometimes I'm just, some days I'd be presenting and I'm like, oh, thank God my clients can't see me right now. They'd be like,
Yeah,
yeah,
all I knew about virtual prior to that moment was webinars, which I never liked
right.
doing webinars. I had done a bunch of them in my speaking career, but you couldn't see anybody in the room. You were speaking to avoid. It was like presenting to a brick wall. I always spoke too
Yes,
fast on them because I had no sense of the response. I left no time for the laugh, even though I had laugh lines like built in.
of
I like
course, because
never
you're
knew how to
hilarious.
hold
Yeah,
empty space for a moment. The slides were never that great. Like, I just never liked it as much as the energy of being in person.
right.
I'm an outgoing extrovert. Like, I'm a capital E, complete Myers-Briggs, like
Yes,
full on nonstop. I'm an
yes,
E.
same.
So if you had asked me in 2019, like, how would I feel staying home? I think I would have had a very different response than what it ended up being. So
Right.
I got very good very quickly, and we could talk about how I turned it around. But I think in that first week, I will say I probably turned things around more quickly than others because I saw it coming. I accepted it. And there's one other thing I want to tell you, Heather. That Monday of that week, I gave a gift of $10 a month to a local food bank,
Hmm.
and I had not food banks had not been my like top 3 places to
Right.
donate. I was the kind of person who showed up with a can for someone else's can drive. I never organized them. And I just had this like flash that this is the kind of thing where more people who never expected to need it are going to need it. And I needed to stay abundant minded and not scarcity
Hmm.
minded. And even though I had not, remember, like I was only making $10,000, $15,000 in my business, we were like living off my wife. We had a stable environment in work for me to grow, but
Sure. Right.
I was like, I need to be open to opportunity. And shortly after, in April or May, I met a contact at Feeding America, which organizes, like,
Right.
coordinates between 200 food banks in the US. And they became a major client for the next 3 years. So, like,
Amazing.
like
Well,
it,
I'm
it all
you're
works.
well, you're saying something that I just think is so interesting because a lot of times because I had this issue, I had this brain issue where and a lot of people were like, because I was being tested for ALS, deadly diagnosis. And people were like, oh my gosh, you must have been so scared. And I was like, I really wasn't because I didn't know what to be scared of. So I wasn't really going to go there. But I was so curious. Like I kept on being like, what is going on? Like, and it's just that curious. But if I had gone to a place of fear, which I'm sure I had moments where I was, but nothing that was really, it was like a moment and nothing that was, it was not something that was constant. But you just said I really needed to be abundant mindset. Like I knew I had to take opportunity. What I think is so interesting is you use some really interesting words. You're like, I declared like this was going to happen on this day. And then the thing is, when you're in that open mindedness, that's when you get the ideas. Like you can't, if you say like, I'm scared, like, even if you say, I'm struggling with this, it's like you reframe it like,
I was
I am
really stuck
so
for 2 days.
curious. Like, yeah.
I would say between Monday and Wednesday is when I felt like when we later compared, like, how long some people waited to take action, I was
Right.
like, "Yeah, no, I was really I was stuck." Until that Wednesday with my peer mastermind when they basically said, like, "Kick yourself out of your way and go help
Right.
people, like, get on with it," and permission granted, right? And then I was, like, getting on with it. I remember there were people who were like, "Well, I'm just gonna take a break. I'm gonna use this as a chance to regroup and do some other stuff," and September, they showed up, and they were so far behind all the other people who had been practicing how to do things virtually or who had expanded their
Right.
revenue streams or found other creative ways to meet their clients' needs, they were really behind. So I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs split there between hitting the gas and seeing what happens, which is the group that
Right.
I ended up in, and hitting the brake and saying, this won't be too long. I'll just come back in 6 weeks. And 6 weeks turned
Right.
into 6 months.
Right. And we're still like the reverberations from it are still
100%.
we're still like forever changed. And I don't even think that we can even begin to understand like how this affected our children and schools and that kind of stuff. That is just so then you take this opportunity. Does this have you always been like this? A little like I'm willing to take a step off the ledge and just trust that there's going to be more ledge there? Or is that something that you feel like the situation, like the environment really created that?
I think that I have a belief around transferable skills and
Okay,
that you're
yeah.
building off of prior experience, even if the line doesn't seem linear in the making of the line. In reverse,
Mhm.
it makes so much more sense. So there were moments where it felt inevitable that I became a virtual event design consultant and an executive Zoom producer.
Right.
And now that I'm doing book launch strategy, it feels inevitable that I did that too.
Right.
I
Don't you
actually,
love seeing where your business takes you? Because where I am today, 11 years later, is nowhere close to just maturing as a business owner. But then the fun twists and turns, because now I do work that I really feel is also like my people are like, what's my purpose? What's my life's work? And I always enjoyed what I did, but now I feel like I found my life's work. And I had no idea it was going to be what it is. It's just really cool when that comes together
I
like
also
that.
had some resistance to trying new things for a little while because I was
Mm,
working so hard to become known as that networking expert. And
right.
so I was turning down other opportunities because my past life, I organized fundraising events and did major gift work for a nonprofit. So that first year when I left my career, I had a lot of inquiries around doing similar work. And I remember talking to my wife about it like multiple times in one day. She was like, "Yeah, it makes sense." I'm like, "So again, I'm being asked if I want," and she was like, "No, it makes sense." Third time, and she finally said, are you asking permission to not make money doing something that's not on your path? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I've lived here for 7 years before I knew you. I can live here without you. I love you, but I don't need you to make more money to live here."
Right.
And I was like,
Oh, that's
so permission granted. And that means you really love me. And oh, okay, great. So I just had a really long runway. And in some ways, I had too long of a runway because
yeah.
I was taking my time, and so many things I did those first 5 years after I left my career were not revenue generating. They were writing a book and doing the podcast, which costs money. Both of those things
Right.
cost money.
Yes. Yes.
Trying out a group coaching program.
Well, isn't it interesting? Like
Yeah.
I know that we I call those things sort of sideliners
Mhm.
because it's very easy. Like the ego shows up in such interesting ways, sometimes in the most reasonable of ways. And I am such like an online course slut. Like I cannot even begin to tell you. Like I should say addict. I don't know. There's just like not a good word for it, but it's just so interesting because you're doing things, right? And it gives you the illusion of productivity, but you're not really doing things that are like the levers in your business because obviously if you're doing that stuff and you're not promoting it too, it's like,
Well, so I was doing things that I now would see as being all the marks of expertise. There are milestones that were important. I wasn't
mm,
focusing on revenue, and I didn't need to for a little while there.
right. Yes.
But there's a book by John Acuff called Finish, The Art of Getting to Done. And in it, he talks about noble obstacles.
Oh,
And
love that.
like a noble obstacle is when you say to a friend, yeah, I got to redo my website before I put out the blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, that makes
Oh,
sense. And like most people think like, yeah, that makes sense, but really you do not need a new anything to put out that new offer. Like you just need to talk to
Right.
8 people and
Yes.
pilot it and just go. So I was still in those early years taking a lot longer to test things. I'm now down to like 6 to 12 weeks I can test an idea. I didn't have that skill, and I also didn't have I think my mentor at one point said, "I just didn't have enough fire in my belly." So my joke was I had 1 child, and I was, like, not stressed out about it, and then I had 2
Right.
kids, and I'm like, "Ooh, people are gonna talk if I have 2 kids and I'm not feeding them enough. Okay, I
Right.
better get under this." And then in the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, I made as much in 2020 as I did in the previous 5 years combined.
Wow.
So the world,
Incredible. Yeah.
like, turned in a startling way, and I worked every day from Father's Day from April till late November, except for Father's Day and US Thanksgiving.
Right.
I
So
was working nonstop.
you mentioned something really interesting because in my coursework, so I have a program called Radical Branding, and when it comes to like once everyone gets like prepped and they're ready to go and ready to actually start promoting, I have like 7 wheels, like 7 spokes off like a core marketing program. Your network being number one. And you said like I piloted with like 6 or 8 people. And that's like how I actually tell people to start reaching out to people who may become potential clients, who may know people who could be good potential clients by inviting them into the process. And they just sit there and they're like, that freaks people out. So why don't you talk about, because it has been so effective about half my program's expensive. It's $15,000. And the way that people come into my program is I personally invite them. I make a little video for them and I'm like, this you got come on. And I make it's fun, it's very easy, there's no pressure. I give them ABC option like so it's like but that is how I enroll people in my program. So I know the power of the network. So I want to say why do people get so freaked out by it? And then I want to talk about how you reached out to your because you're like I'm able to pilot an idea within 6 to 12 weeks
Yeah, I
because
can
I'm
give you
sure
an
you're
example.
leveraging. Yeah, I would love to learn more about that.
So my first book is called Croissants versus Bagels: Strategic, Effective, and Inclusive Networking at Conferences. And the bagels are those tight clusters, those shoulder huddles where you can't break in when you're at like a networking hour. And the
Yes.
croissant is when someone shifts their body language to make space. So that's what I was
Oh, yeah.
wanting to be known for. And when the pandemic happened, I then
The
got all into
croissant,
Zoom.
not the
Yeah,
bagel.
be the croissant. And then I got all into doing Zoom stuff. And
That is I'm gonna make a bumper stick like, my guests say the best things, I'm just gonna start a bumper sticker
that's
company
great.
or
So
laptop
March
sticker, like, I
13th,
love it.
2020, I host my first virtual happy hour. And April 14th, 2020, I announce a pilot program, a 4-week pilot program for people who want to become more confident and competent using Zoom.
Mm,
Between March 13th and April 14th, I got one chapter ahead of everybody else on how to use Zoom. Like 1 week after so March 20th, I hosted an event and I used breakout rooms the first time.
uh,
Right. So I was just a little bit ahead. So I started hosting this weekly gathering in March, and by April 14th, I declare it has a name. It's called No More Bad Zoom Virtual Happy Hour. And it stayed Friday at 5 for 2 years weekly and then monthly for 2 years. And then I also 2 years in, I have a membership group called Content and Connection Club that still meets
mm,
on Fridays at 5 Eastern. If you had asked me like what's the best time of the year of the week to like have something, I would never have said Friday at 5 Eastern. But it just
right,
happened,
yeah,
right? Because it's Thursday at
yeah,
8 that I had an idea. So the way I piloted that at the time was that people were coming to me to ask me questions. I got a lot of like pick your brain
mm,
coffee chat conversations in that month. And I had this split personality moment where my extrovert self was like, "Ooh, people are getting on my calendar. That's fantastic." And then my coach brain, because I'm also a business strategy coach, right? So my coach
mm,
brain was like, "You would never tell your clients to just fill their calendar with random conversations. Like, what is the point of these conversations?" So
right, yeah,
those conversations became the research calls that led me to do the 4-week pilot program. And I ran it 4 months in a row. And then by 3 months in, it became a certification program. And I started to certify people in using Zoom. So both speakers and
right,
virtual Zoom producers, basically, some of whom still work for me today. So by the fall, I had these companies reaching out to me to help them turn their events into virtual events with more
mm,
connection, more
right,
ease, more engagement, less stress.
yes,
And the testing I could have gone and said, well, I've got to go create a year and a half's worth of video before I release something. But in that moment, I just knew people needed something and I knew more than they
Right.
did.
Yes.
So I ran everything live. I didn't create videos until the fall of 2020. And I actually created them as content for social media and then
Right.
repurposed them into a course that mostly I saw as
Right.
a resource library for people I was working with. And then I also had that as an opt in. People could opt in and get a PDF of all these different links to different content. Yes, the content
Right.
existed on YouTube, but it was also an opt in because I had organized it. So
Right.
I
Well,
just think,
I like too because people I also know that people like really think that they have to have everything figured out,
first
but they
thing to
really
do.
don't. You just need to be like a week ahead of what you promised next. Like and then create it like you're paving the road as you go down the road. But it ends up being so much more efficient that way because you're able to pivot, you're able to introduce new content, you're able to like really figure out like okay where people and then you can start to hardwire it in, which
Right.
is so much easier the second time you do it. Like the heaviest lift is at the beginning. I always
So
tell my people like this is the hardest it's ever going to be
you asked me
at the
about how
beginning.
people feel about this and how we can approach it differently. So my
Yeah.
second book is called Small List, Big Results: Launch a Successful Offer No Matter the Size of Your Email List. And the premise is that no matter how big or small our email list is, and we almost always
Mhm.
want it to be bigger, our network is always bigger than our email list. And our
Mm.
network is filled with people that might be interested. Like I have this belief, not backed on science, that we've already met 80% of the people we need to know to be successful. So it's about
Right, I believe that.
waking up and engaging our network. So you don't need a book to do this, but this is the basis of my launch strategy for books.
Mhm.
But even without a book, it's like, how do you reach out to people who are likely prospects and referral partners and have a conversation, figure out what they need, develop something, and then pilot it? So that's what my second book really just walks people through first a mindset shift and then step by step how to identify those people and reach out to them,
Right.
have those conversations. And I really just was breaking down like I had treated myself like a coaching client, which is how I was able to move so quickly. And then similarly, I saw the writing on the wall. The virtual events business was starting to go down. Like it was a huge
Right.
spike and then it mellowed out. And I still have some clients I've been working with since 2020, but some have stopped for various reasons. So
Sure.
I knew that I needed another revenue stream that I could
Right.
generate myself as opposed to waiting for people to book me for events. And I tested 3 ideas in 6 months. And so again, like being able to move quickly through those, trying those out, and the third one just struck a match, and it's just been like I then spent
Right.
a year and a half like building this ecosystem around authors, writers, speakers.
Right.
I have so much content and value and twice a week podcasts and a curated network of experts who work with entrepreneurs around their books and a monthly free virtual networking event. And 3 times a year, we do a Kindle flash sale campaign. Like all those things didn't exist and now they do. And so
Right.
you don't start by building, you start by testing.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like I when because marketing is one of those things that people are like, "Well, if I know this information, then I'll be ready." And I'm like, "No, it's not like that. The only way through is through, and you learn as you go." And even I know that this might be shocking for some people, but even in the world of professional marketing, everything's still a roll of the dice. Like everything at the end of the day, you have to think about like big national campaigns that like just completely flopped for different brands. It's like those people spent millions of dollars, did tons of research, have the best creative minds, and it can still go sideways and they don't. So but you learn so much more by doing. It's like I could read and watch YouTube videos on how to ice skate, but
Yeah.
yeah, my point's been made. Yes, great. So talk to me a little bit more about some like creative. I just love this idea of networking. So I just want to, I promise we'll get back to like your fascinating life, but I just am so curious. What are some really like if someone's nervous to reach out to someone who already knows and loves them and likes them and wants to help them? Like it's so interesting that we for the people that already know and like us, we're just like, oh my gosh. What
Well,
are
so
some
here's a
creative ways to reconnect with
I
people?
have I have this sort of way to to prioritize or identify those likely prospects. And I say likely prospects, Heather, because
Right.
the word ideal client, when I was first getting started as an entrepreneur, bothered me so much. Every course you pay
Same.
for, the first module is describe your ideal client. And I didn't have an ideal client. I feel like I was making things up. And
Yes.
they're
Yes.
like Starbucks or Dunkin'. And I'm like, ah, they're like audiobooks or podcasts. Ah, and they're like, do they listen in the
Right.
car or in the shower? I'm like,
Well, what the
ah,
hell? Like, I had a client who did all this like persona research, and he was like, this person reads like the Atlantic magazine. And I said, and he spent like, you can just tell it's something he spent a lot of time pulling together. And I'm like, how is that going to help your marketing? Like, what are you, I'm more like, what are their hopes and dreams? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, he reads the Atlantic, but you don't know like what's going on here. Like, why does he read the Atlantic? It's
yeah.
like, it's just so interesting. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
So I didn't
So
want
I
to use
love
the
that
term,
too.
I use the term likely prospect because there's some kind of indication that they might be predisposed to having a conversation with us.
Love
So
that.
the first criteria of my process, called Wake Up Your Network, is a two-part question. First
Mm,
question is, would they remember my name? And the second is, would I be happy to hear from them out of the blue? So if your
I
instinct
love
is a
that.
quick yes for both of those, yes, they remember my name. Yes, they'd be happy to hear from them out of the blue. Well, already clearly, if they remember your name and you be happy to hear from them, then probably they'd be happy to hear from you, right? Like that should set
Right.
you at ease.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
next three questions are about their connection to you, their influence in this space, and their interest in your
Yes.
topic.
Right.
And we rank people. And based on how people are ranked, they fall into a few different categories. One is likely prospects, which means they themselves would be interested in whatever you're talking about or your offer that
Mhm.
you're developing.
Right. Love
A
that.
referral partner might be interested for themselves, but they also can get you in front of a group of people who might be interested. So podcast
Right.
hosts or people who run membership groups or people who work at a company who could bring you in.
Mhm.
The last category are general supporters, and not everyone falls into this. There are people who rank low enough that you just stop thinking about them for this particular question.
Right.
But the people who are still remaining, there are some general supporters. And like for a book launch, general supporters would probably include fellow authors, fellow entrepreneurs who at least get
Right. What
the
you're trying to do.
basics of what we're
Yeah.
trying to do,
Yeah.
even if they're not topic like lined up, they might still be like, yeah, I want to support what you're doing. That sounds great. But you need whatever the team of people, the list of people you're reaching out to needs to be two-thirds likely prospects and referral partners and only a third
Mm.
general supporters. If you have it flipped the other way, you're putting a lot of energy having conversations without having a real plan to build the pipeline
Right.
between that conversation and a business offer. And
Yes.
so you just really need to line up between 12 and 25 people. 12 if you know your audience really well and this is not your first offer. 25 if you're really just starting out of the gate.
Love
And
that.
your
Yeah.
email is basically like, hey, I'm putting something together around this topic. Before I get too far, I thought I should check some of my assumptions based on your experience, expertise, lived
Mhm.
moments around this. I thought you may have some opinions. I'd love to hear them. Would you schedule some time with me so we can have a chat? So
Right.
it's vague, but it's has some boundaries. And if they say yeah, and why are they saying yeah? Because they know you and they want to support you, and you
Yeah.
told them
Yeah.
can add value. And
Right.
it's not a sales pitch, and you are not selling to them on that call. You are saying things like, okay, before we get on the call, then thanks for scheduling a time. Can you come with three either questions, scenarios, challenges, problems, right? Three things, three questions. And instead of answer, here's a trick, don't answer the question. So the first 5 minutes, the 30 minutes, how are you? How's the wife and kids? Chat. Your job is to now move it forward to the next phase. You have 15 minutes to go through the three questions. You're not answering their three questions. Their three questions are indicative of the little p problem they know they have and they're willing to admit. It is not about the big problem you think they might have. And they
Right.
have no awareness of the big problem. So you want to ask them questions to get them thinking. Why these three things? What have you tried? What's worked?
Right.
When it's not working, what's the bad thing that happens? What are you worried about might
Right.
happen? What do you think
Yes.
might work? Have you hired someone to try this? Have you tested this in this way? Have you this right? You're finding out their past effort because that will give
Right.
you an indication of their future effort. If they've never hired anyone and they've never gotten a consultant or a coach or they're not going to hire you either, right? Like it just
Right.
it's not
Right.
they
Yes.
don't think this problem warrants that. And at the end, you have just 10 minutes. And in the last 10 minutes, your job is to say, you know what? I don't know everything about what you're talking about, but for 15 minutes, I have some ideas. And based on what you said and what I've heard other people say, here are one or two things you could try. But again, not writing you like a solid prescription. But you know what?
Right,
I would
right,
love you to check back in 2 weeks, tell me how that's going. Because you want to really make that an open door. You don't want to give them
yeah,
a list of an hour's worth of ideas and then they don't know
right,
next steps and they don't reach out to you because they feel embarrassed. They didn't take advantage of your great wisdom and then they go and ask somebody
right,
else and they hire someone else, right? You don't want that to
right.
happen. That happens a lot. I actually have a resource at robbiesamuels.com/magical. It's the question you use to flip the script. And the question is, you sound a lot like the clients I've worked with. Would you like to hear what it's like for us to work together? And so it stops
Oh,
those like pick your brain moments. It stops
Robbie, I feel
you.
like I should be paying you a coaching fee right now.
That's how
People
I
think
want.
I'm interviewing them for my podcast. No, I'm getting free coaching. Like
This
this
is
is
what I want people to
oh my
think
God,
differently.
I love this. Well, one of the things that we have a mutual friend, Blake Fly, who
Hmm.
is like also very good at building a network through like random acts of kindness, right? So, or random acts of
Sure.
appreciation. And his goal is to always be top of mind. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is like we think about like, oh, well, like the universe is going to, you had mentioned like, I have to have this abundant mindset and that kind of stuff. And you had abundance come in. But what I found is way more effective is yes, let the universe do her thing. But when you're in action, when you're creating momentum, like it's putting out reverberations that's creating waves and that will eventually hit somebody's brain who's going to be like, oh my God, I got to reach out to Robbie Samuels or, where you're going to become top of mind.
Right.
And it's like, because it's not like you were like, oh, I need this mindset. It took you 2 days to get there. And on the third day, you started to take action.
Yes.
That's like almost biblical.
You
On the
can't.
first day,
Yeah,
I
you
got
can't.
clarity
That's
into,
funny,
yeah.
Heather. No one else has pointed that out.
Yes,
You
right.
can't. Like I've never watched The Secret or book or whatever, but
Right.
people reference that a lot. Maybe back when
Yes.
it was more popular, I would hear people talk about it, and because the way I've always framed things, like I don't want to say always, but I'd say the last 20 years probably in my life. So I'm 50, right? Like I feel like did a lot of work in my 20s to get to the point where I
Two
thought
quarters,
differently.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Power of Now. Thank you, Celestine Prophecy. Thank you.
Oh,
Right. So,
yeah. Power of Now. Like, Power of Now is one of those books where it just I was like, so many people recommended it to me, and I'm like, I'm never gonna read that book. Like, I don't know why I'm so hostile towards book recommendations like that. And then I'll be at one of the Tatter Cover bookstore that we were talking about, and the goddamn Power of Now. Like, I don't even know what happened. It was just like in my hands. I'm like, I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
remember looking for this. I don't remember even really taking it off the shelf. It's like it literally was just like in my
Well, if
hands.
you
And I'm
want
like,
another one like that,
I'll read it.
one that
Yes.
actually I still remember in a lot of detail is called Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukov.
Yes.
Read it like I think I was,
Oh my God.
24 years old. So
Same.
I
Same when
just
he was on Oprah.
yeah, so
Yes.
suddenly it's
Right.
everywhere. Yeah. So I just
Yes.
think that it's about two factors. You're more likely to have serendipity happen if you know what you're looking for. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
really think there's a bumper sticker for you. I really think
Yes.
that we need to have a clear vision. You can go to a conference. This is the work that I did for in person networking. You can go to a conference having only handled the logistics of showing up, travel and booking a place to stay
Right.
and paying for a ticket, and done nothing else, and then complain 3 days later that you didn't meet any of the right people and decide that it's not worth it for you. Or you
Right.
could do a little advanced planning, spend not that much time engaging in those chaotic energy spaces of the hallway and meet exactly the three people you need to meet over the 3 days and feel like this was the best conference you've ever gone to. Like you
Right.
don't have to be in that space all the time. You just to be setting
Right.
the intention, followed by action. And so part of the giving the $10 to that food bank was the intention of not feeling I had to take like suddenly feeling desperate. Like I don't think I
Yes.
operate well when I feel cornered about things. So I just didn't want to
Right.
stay stuck. I wanted to release that energy and then be open to what came next.
Yes.
But I will say that it was very freeing. We want to go back to that moment when I had to make some choices about the business in 2020.
Right.
Nobody was looking at anyone else's business. We were all self-focused because we were all just trying to paddle as hard as we could upstream. and no
Right.
one was looking at what anyone else was doing on the river. But it meant there was a certain amount of freedom to try things.
Right.
So I could tell you all the things that worked, and you're all like, wow. And I also could probably come up with a long list of things I tried that did not work, but no
Right.
one ever wants to know or ask about that. But also, there was no like residual angst about it not working. It was like, okay, fine.
One of the things that I think is key too is like when you had set goals. So I'll tell people if you don't have goals, I don't know what you're doing. You're doing stuff, but stuff is not going to grow your business. And then the thing is about goals is the beautiful thing about having goals is, and this is the whole secret, is you want to stop doing what's not working as quickly as possible and do more of what is working. And when you have a goal attached to something, you get that clarity and it takes the emotion out. Like I love data because data takes the emotion out of the decisions. You can just look to see if something's working or if it's not working.
So
And then you could just be like, yeah,
I have a tip related to that,
love
which
that.
changed a lot for how I focus on things. It used to be I said I'd take like a year and a half to see if it worked. The problem
Right.
with it was that I never knew a year in whether it was like lack of effort, wrong strategy,
Hmm.
wrong goal. Like I just didn't know. I then started doing quarterly goal setting, which is focus on something. The downside of quarterly goal setting is there's no downtime schedule between quarters. And so you always feel like you're taking time away from your goal to take a break. And so it just felt like I couldn't ever
Right. Yes.
reset. And I also had a hard time figuring out like what were my second and third quarter goals if I don't even know how the first one turned out. Like I don't know. So
Right.
then I got
Yeah.
into 12-week sprints. So 12-week sprints sounds like a quarterly goal, but here's the difference. There are four things to do between the sprints that you could take 4 weeks to do or do it in half an hour piece in half a day. The first was to reflect and assess to get a sense of what did happen. The second was
Hmm.
relax and rejuvenate, which is to take a break. Could be a week off, could be an afternoon nap. The
Right.
third is to do some just in case learning. So that's the kind of learning that is not directly tied to your goal, but it's the kind of stuff you put off during your sprint. The replays and the podcast episodes and the books that you're like, it sounded interesting. Like crypto sounds interesting, or I should
Right.
play around with
Or like, I should
ChatGPT.
know how to make a pivot table in
Right, whatever
Excel.
it is. Like, I should play with
Yeah.
Canva, like, things that
Yeah.
aren't directly tied,
Right.
but could
Right.
be interesting. And then the fourth step is to take all of that information, what happens also during the break, because your brain actually finds new information while you're relaxing. And
Yes.
then the new things you learned about, like, sometimes our best ideas come from the edges of what we think
Right.
would be our stuff.
Yes.
You put all that together to create a new strategic plan for the next 12 weeks. Now, 12 weeks is sort of where I tell people to create a new strategic plan for the next 12 weeks. Now, 12 weeks is sort of where I tell people to start. But if you get good at this, you can test ideas in 6 to 8 weeks. Like you
Right.
can
Right.
get to the point where you're like, is there traction or not? So the first time I did this and I saw really noticed it, I had
Right.
done a pilot of a group program. And then I went to do the full one and I made a landing page. And I can tell you, I don't love landing pages. I've gotten better at them, but I remember at the time being like, oh, this is not how I want to sell things. It
Right.
also felt very formulaic. It didn't feel like me. And
Right.
so I got 250 people to look at the page. I had video testimonials. I had all this right stuff. No one was
Right.
booking a call with me. And I figured out
Mm.
12 weeks in at the end of the quarter that I needed to try something different. If I had just given
Right.
myself a year to do it, I would not have stopped to have that moment of like, huh,
Yeah.
what do I know so
Well,
far?
and you raise a really important point because one of the things is when you're doing something and promoting something in a way that it doesn't feel right to you, you're just like, this isn't how I really want it to look. I'm doing all the right things the way that everyone would tell you how to do it with the testimonials, the customer journey, the arc of the transformation, all that stuff. But like, you were never 100% behind it either because you were never feeling good about it. And the cool thing is there's no right or wrong way to get your message out. Like it's just the most effective way that works for you. So I love
Right.
that. I just love that you're just so open.
You know what I realized when I did take a break, right, and to look back, that 7 women had reached out to me during the last 6 weeks when I had been doing all this promotion of that page to ask to meet with me and pay me to do something that wasn't the offer, but, like,
Mhm.
wanted to book 4 coaching sessions about, like, getting a podcast off the ground. And I did hire a coach for a day and we
Right.
met together. So that's the other thing. You have to know when coaches need coaches.
Yes.
I didn't know at the time who my ideal clients were, remember? Like, I was still trying it all
Yes.
out. Well, it turns out it's entrepreneurial women in their 50s and beyond who are looking to grow their impact and income through some kind of new revenue stream. And I
Love
always
that.
get asked, "How is that? Like, how are you the
Yes.
person for that?" And I'm like, "They found me." So the
Right.
realization was that's who was in my pilot. That's who the 7 women were who called me.
Right.
I rebranded, refocused the language, immediately filled the pilot over the next version, not the pilot, and like ran a program for like 2 years, like based on really understanding my audience and
Right.
all my marketing. Like, I had been accidentally marketing to this audience when I was teaching people how to network and I'd go to a conference. I often was
Mhm.
the only guy invited to a women's leadership summit to speak. So the only other men in the room in suits were like the senior executives who were sponsoring
Right.
the women's ERG kind of thing.
Why do you
And
think that is? Oh gosh.
well,
Yeah,
I
I'm a supporter, like, and I'm gonna
so
be
for
sitting
me,
in the back of the room.
so I'd be invited to come speak, and I was speaking about networking. And I can tell you,
Mm,
here are 2 examples of why I was the right person and why I kept getting invited back. So I'd be wearing a jacket because I was trying to like look professional, and the temperature in the room was set to make me comfortable. And I would say from the podium, "Hey, y'all look great in your sundresses. Maybe we should go talk to someone about changing the temperature. Don't worry about me." like
yeah.
we know it is 323 women who are
Yes.
wearing very little
Freezing.
clothing,
Yes.
freezing, and there's 4 guys who are wearing jackets. It's like, come on. And I
Right.
also
That
had this
is
whole
so fun. That is so like ripped from the headlines. I actually knew these women who started this co-working space exclusively for women, and one of their selling points is was the temperature of the office.
I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
so my second thing was I was talking about networking and I would say, "Does anyone know when women won the right to vote?" And everyone would say, "Oh, 1919, 1920." I'm like, "Yeah, so it was voted in 1919, went into effect 1920. When are women get the right to pockets?" And I would just pause for a beat and there'd be all this laughter. And I'm like, how
Yes.
come my 3-year-old has more pockets than my wife? And my wife's pocket holds a chapstick, and you have a phone that's only gotten bigger, and I want you to have
Yes.
business cards on you. So where are you going to put them? Let's talk about the clothing you'll choose. And I would literally sit there and talk about wearing a sweater because the temperature might change. Does that
Right.
sweater have pockets? Don't bring your huge bag and carry it around with you at the conference. Or no one
Right.
wants to see you digging around to the bottom of the bag and handing a business card that's smeared with makeup. I've been handed that
Right.
business card. It makes you memorable for all the wrong
Yes.
reasons. Like, here I am relating. So before I even was trying to sell to this demographic, I had
Right.
already had a lot of relatability.
Oh my
And
gosh,
that's why people
completely.
work with you.
Like, I love that. Like, when you really see someone, I think you would. I just am really proud of my business cards because I use a service called moo.com. So
Mhm.
all the backs of them are different. And my goal was that somebody would get a message that they really needed to get at that moment, and then that they would keep it. Like, I would go to their office and I would see it like on their desk, or they would open their wallet and they would still have these business cards. And it works so beautifully. And I have two that I have one that's like, everything's going to be all right. And I have another one like, it will be more beautiful than you could even possibly imagine. And I've given people my business cards and they literally have started weeping. They're just like,
Aw.
and then when I hand them out, I'm just like, oh, you got to pick wisely. Like, are you sure that one? I also have one that says, you're doing a great fucking job. Everybody always wants that one.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I can't juice it. You literally get the card. I have one that says like, you're like super pretty, and guys get that one a lot, which I really love. So it's just,
I think
yeah,
business cards should be memorable and be something you talk about. I have a couple of cards, but for
I
my
agree. Like, I think business cards are so important. I can't believe that.
So I have one for my virtual events work. So it's just plain on one side. The
Right.
other side is a picture of me, which is actually a screenshot of me at my desk in my like Zoom setup. I didn't plan for this picture for this reason. I happened to take it. It was June of
Perfect.
a couple of years ago, 23, and it was the first time I was hosting an event in June that year, and I put up this little rainbow kind of border, which is one of the frames, and immediately, all these other people in the gallery view started doing it or asking in chat how to do it or asking, can allies do it? And I took a picture of all of us. Like, it was so heartwarming that there were
Yeah.
30 people on a call, and like instantaneously a dozen people did it. And then everyone else was like, can I do that? How do I do that? And people wanted to show this was not an LGBT event, right? This was
Right.
just a networking event of business people. And that felt so beautiful. I felt so supported. And that ended up being the back, like what I put on the back. So I love the
Mm,
idea. And I'm like, oh, next time we meet, this is what I'll, where I'll be. And I point out the things on my bookshelf. I'm like, well, I'm a
right.
podcast host. That's why I have the fancy mic. And here are my books. This
Yes.
is the award that I got. So, like, I use it as a point of reference. And when they go home and they find this card in their pile, they know who gave it to them. So that's clear.
Yes, that's the best, is to always be just top of mind, but in a way that makes someone like just be like with a
Yeah.
big smile. Like that is such a good feeling. So you have reinvented yourself multiple times, and you've always just seen, I don't know if you're wired this way, or if this was something that you just decided, like you took a step forward, you're like, oh, this isn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be. Because I know sometimes you think like, my visual for this is like, you want to take action, you want something to happen, but it feels like you're on the top of a high rise building and you have to jump over an alley, like you're in the movie The Matrix, to get to the roof of another high rise building. And in the alley, it's like there are needles and like a baby, like in a dirty diaper, like wandering dogs, like broken glass. And then really, so I've been there too. Like, even though I do this for a living, like you still butt up against your own limitations, your own limiting beliefs sometimes. And when I do take action, because I know that's the only thing you can do, is the only way through is through, it ends up not being like that at all. It's like stepping over a crack in the sidewalk. But what is, like, if someone's really feeling a little stalled out, what is one piece of advice that you would give to them just to help them jump off that building and
Well, I
trust there's
actually
going to
think
be a soft
I would
landing?
tell them to go back in the building that they're standing in and go find 5 people to have a conversation with, just to, like, vet the
Oh,
idea that they have, and, get
amazing.
a
Oh my
support
gosh.
team behind them, and get a
I
group of
just
people who
got
are
goosebumps when
cheerleading.
you said that. We did
And
not plan this, by the way. That's like a really perfect.
And then you want those 5 people, 2 of them are to be so enthusiastic, they're gonna call ahead to people in the other building, and people are gonna start getting to the top because 'cause they're gonna wanna see you make this jump. So, I want there to be, like, already enthusiasm before you make any leaps. Like, we should
Yes.
not be doing leaps, we should be doing tests before you
Yes.
leap, because
Right.
then it doesn't feel like a leap. Like, even when I left my day job to go full time into a business, I wrote a blog post saying that even though I work for myself, I'm not out on my own, because
Yes, true.
I built up this business while I was employed. People were rooting for me to figure it out. Now I had to start over there too. I was doing trainings and speaking engagements for boards of directors of nonprofits. And my big deal, big time, but amazingly humble, was when I got booked for foundations to do work.
Mm,
And when I was leaving my career, I realized that wasn't the audience I wanted to stay with. And I had to figure out a new audience. And it took me a while to like really understand who that new audience was going to be for the work I was doing at the time. So I had that little moment too. And so I listened to podcasts. I was listening to Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn.
mhm.
And it got to the point though where every idea, every guest he had on, I was like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. And I was like, and I learned this concept of just in time versus just in case learning. And so I had to stop doing just in case learning. And I decided to host a podcast. I was like, this is a medium I can get behind.
Right.
Let me do this. It'll be great networking. It'll give me content. I need this skill. And so I committed to that. But then that opened all the doors, right? That then I interviewed people that I then used those interviews as the basis of stories and quotes in my book that I came out with a year later,
Incredible. Yeah.
right? So you don't stay stuck. You just start testing things.
Connecting. Yeah.
Yeah, and also you commit. Like, the podcast was an experiment, but I also said I was gonna do it for 2 years. Like, the fancy mic that I currently have, I bought in 2015, in the summer of 2015, when I was getting started with a podcast. I didn't start with a little USB mic. I bought
Right.
this really fancy, expensive setup and said,
Oh
like,
my gosh. Podcast mics were probably so expensive back
"Oh, it
though.
was outrageous," and this
Yeah.
one requires a special box with special XLR, blah, blah, like, it's a mess. And
Right.
so but now I've been using it this summer, 10 years,
Oh, does it
like
have a
10
name?
years. Well,
Yeah. His name is
I
Mike. Yes.
Yeah, his name is Mike. Here's what I'll say, when the pandemic happened, if I had only had access to my MacBook Air
Mm,
laptop with its awful audio and video and camera, I would not have been able to turn my business as quickly as I did.
right.
That having this system, this podcast setup already, again, like I had a good, at the time I was using a different desktop, but I had a desktop camera that was decent, and I had this really good podcast mic, and I already owned a ring light.
Mm,
So all these people were scrambling to figure out these basics, and like, well, I had those basics, and I had been
right.
trained on how to do virtual facilitation for a mastermind. So I knew when people said, "Well, you can't see anyone's body language." I'm like, I literally spent an entire day in the training talking about people's facial expressions and what muscles they tighten when they're holding back tears.
Right.
There's so much information that you're overlooking. So, like, I didn't buy into the idea that you can't. And I will say one more thing about this. Everyone was talking about events where they were comparing in person to virtual. And I said, it's like
Mm,
comparing hockey to soccer. They seem, from an outside perspective, like the same thing. They have goals
right.
and there's this movement up and down and there's defense and offense, but they have different rules because they operate at different speeds. We cannot
Ah, right.
apply one set of rules to the other and think to win. We have to
Right.
learn the game that we're playing. Like, if you know how to play soccer, you are not going to suddenly be like excellent superstar at playing hockey. Like,
No,
you
and you
have
can't
to
play
learn.
soccer in ice skates because you're gonna pop the ball.
Right, you have to
Yes.
know what you're doing, you have to have the right
Yeah.
equipment,
Right.
you have to know the restrictions, like, in-person events are also restricted. The fact that we have to all be there in one place means we have events that have tons of concurrent sessions happening at once. I went to an event with
Right.
42 concurrent sessions. No one's gonna tell me that that is a good design principle. It's just the reality was we couldn't have the event last more than X number of days, so we shoved everything in. And I'm like, well, that was a constraint and we lived with it. So now we have
Right.
different constraints, but we can actually now do that same event over an entire year if we wanted to. Like,
Right.
why not create a community year round instead of a one time show up to this one
Right.
city? So
Yeah.
it's just, it's a mindset shift about operating within what's possible and excelling within those frameworks. Like, become the best soccer player you can and don't worry about the fact that you don't know how to ice skate, like, just, or
Right.
rollerblade or whatever the
Just
kind of
like,
hockey you're picturing.
yeah, just run, Forrest, run.
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Robbie Samuels, if people are like, I got to learn more about this guy, I have a book in me, I want to figure it out, I want to network, I want to do all these different things. How do they get in touch with you?
Well, robbiesamuels.com is the easiest way to find everything I'm doing. I
And
am
it's
a
Robbie,
multi-passionate.
I.E.,
Yeah,
Robbie.
ROBBIESAMUELS. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I work with entrepreneurs who are writing books to help them grow a launch team with a focus of getting 50 or more Amazon reviews. But the real purpose of that is to create a network of likely prospects and referral partners so that they're building a
Mm,
pipeline from their book to their business. Because it's
yes.
those conversations that will lead to new revenue and new media
Right.
opportunities. You don't need a book to do that. I also do coaching and I still do virtual event
Right.
designs, whether it's book launches or was helping people design and run their events through trainings. I love LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Say hello. Say you heard me
Yes.
here.
Oh my gosh. I have loved this so much. I could have a whole other 54 minutes talking to you about books, but I would be, I was just listening because I just launched my podcast and it's super cool having the conversations with people. But then when you actually listen, I was listening to some of them afterwards and I was just like, because everyone has all these curveballs. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this story is so interesting. Or I was like, this one guy just had all these like crazy things happen. Like, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And I was like, I just love to hear people's stories so much. So I hope that there are people like me in this world who love to hear people's amazing stories because this has been an absolute joy. I love your energy. I love the work you're doing. I love the way you just take such casual, but also such profound action. You're like, well, I just, I had to do this. And so I just did it. And it just seems like the way that you talk about it is so matter of fact. And I really love that. You really take away a lot of that angst that a lot of people have for moving forward.
I
So
love the premise of the show. So thanks for inviting me.
thank you so much. I loved having you. You have a beautiful day.